All right, everyone, welcome back to XRP Daily Brief, your go-to source for everything happening around XRP, macro liquidity, and institutional flows. I wasn't planning to record today, but sometimes the market gives you a moment that is simply too important to ignore, a moment where you stop whatever you're doing, hit record, and speak directly to the people who are actually paying attention. And right now, we are roughly 24 hours away, give or take, depending on where in the world you're watching, from one of the most important macro shifts crypto has seen in years. Most people don't see it. Most people aren't talking about it. And most people will only understand its impact after the market reacts. But you're here. And because you're here, you're already ahead of most of the crypto world. December 1st, the macro flip, approaches in less than 24 hours. Let's get straight to the point. Tomorrow, December 1st, the Federal Reserve officially ends quantitative tightening. QT. Let that sink in. The same Federal Reserve that has spent the last years pulling liquidity out of the financial system, the same institution that has forced markets to operate under tighter credit, higher borrowing costs, and reduced capital flow, is about to stop the tightening cycle. That's not just a policy change. That is a macro reset. And for assets like XRP, assets that respond violently to changes in liquidity, this moment could become one of the most important catalysts of the entire year. Why ending QT is a massive deal. Let's break it down so you fully understand why this matters. When QT is active, liquidity is being drained. That means credit tightens, borrowing costs rise, institutions become defensive, volatility stays suppressed, rallies lose momentum, risk assets struggle, retail stays cautious, inflows slow down. Crypto, being one of the highest risk asset classes, has felt this pressure harder than almost any other market. Every attempt at a rally since 2022 has hit a ceiling. Every breakout has fizzled. Every moment of optimism has been met with liquidity being pulled away. But in about 24 hours, that environment changes. When QT ends, the Fed stops shrinking its balance sheet. They stop draining liquidity. They stop removing capital from the system. Instead, they begin reinvesting maturing assets, which in simple terms means liquidity stabilizes, credit pressure eases, capital begins flowing again, risk assets breathe, and markets don't wait for the liquidity to arrive. They react the moment the policy direction flips. That's the part retail always misses. The market has been climbing a macro mountain. Since 2022, we've all been climbing a macro uphill battle. Inflation pressure, rate hikes, tightening liquidity, high borrowing costs, quantitative tightening. Crypto has been trying to move forward with a 50-pound weight attached. Tomorrow, that weight gets removed. This isn't a maybe catalyst. This isn't a chart pattern. This isn't speculation. This is policy, and policy drives liquidity. Liquidity drives markets, and markets drive price. Why XRP specifically stands to benefit the most. Not all assets react equally to liquidity expansion. Bitcoin may get inflows because it's the macro hedge. Ethereum may get flows because it's the base layer of DeFi. But XRP is different. XRP is designed around liquidity. It's literally built as a bridge asset, a token whose value and utility increase when liquidity increases. XRP is one of the most liquidity-sensitive digital assets in the entire industry. And right now, XRP sits in a position that amplifies the impact of this macro shift. ETF inflows rising, retail supply shrinking, institutional doors open, on-chain accumulation climbing, volatility compressed, mentions and sentiment steadily building. Combine that with liquidity returning to the system, and XRP enters a phase where price discoveries often happen fast. Not gradually, not politely, but violently. Institutions care about liquidity, not charts. Retail stares at candles. Institutions stare at liquidity. They don't move based on influencers. They don't move based on hype. They move when the macro environment allows them to deploy large amounts of capital efficiently. Ending QT is a clear signal. Defensive positioning becomes unnecessary. Capital rotation can begin. Risk models loosen. Buying power increases. When the environment shifts, institutions move early, long before retail even realizes anything changed. And with XRP now having ETF pathways and compliant accumulation structures, Institutions finally have a direct, legal, regulated route to position. That's a huge difference compared to previous cycles. The psychological flip is even more important. A change in liquidity isn't just financial, it's psychological. When borrowing costs drop and capital flows more easily, consumers spend more, investors take more risk, businesses invest, sentiment improves, optimism returns, fear fades, curiosity grows, and crypto thrives on that psychological shift more than any market on earth. One spark of liquidity can turn into inflows momentum, FOMO, aggressive repricing, especially for assets like XRP that already have structural demand. The countdown, 24 hours left. Depending on where you're watching from in the world, we have approximately 24 hours remaining before December 1st hits and QT officially ends. This is the final stretch, the last window before the macro environment flips, the moment many people will only understand in hindsight. But not you. You're here. You're paying attention. You understand the mechanics behind the move, not just the price action. And the reality is simple. Liquidity moves first. Market moves second. Retail moves last. Make sure you're thinking like the first group, not the last. Important disclaimer. This is not financial advice. Crypto is volatile. Always assess your own financial situation and risk tolerance. Never invest what you can't afford to lose. This analysis is educational based on public macroeconomic data and market structure. Final thoughts. Before the macro flip, liquidity is the oxygen of markets. And for the first time in years, the oxygen supply is about to increase instead of decrease. The timing, the setup, the structure, the sentiment, everything suggests that the next phase of the market is forming right in front of us. The question isn't whether something is coming, it's whether people are paying attention before it arrives. Drop a comment below if you made it this far. Tell me where you're watching from and what you expect from December 1st. Stay informed, stay focused, and I'll see you on the other side, right here on XRP Daily Brief.